Welcome to English Language Academy. I tried my grandparents' daily routine for a day. It changed me. Introduction. When I visited my grandparents last weekend, I couldn't help but notice how different their daily lives were compared to mine. Their days seemed simple but full of purpose, unlike my own, which often felt rushed and distracted. Curious to understand their way of life, I decided to live a day in their shoes. What I learned was far more profound than I ever expected. 6 a.m., early morning wake-up. The first challenge of the day was waking up at 6 in the morning. For someone like me, used to hitting the snooze button repeatedly, this was tough. But my grandpa greeted me with a cheerful, "Good morning," as if it were the most natural thing in the world. We started the day with some light stretching and a walk around the garden. It wasn't just a walk, though. Grandpa stopped to inspect the flowers, admire the sunrise, and even talk to the neighbor who was also out early. "Nature teaches patience," he said, pointing at a budding rose. It was a simple moment, but deeply grounding. 7 a.m., breakfast and gratitude. Breakfast was nothing fancy. Porridge, boiled eggs, and fresh fruit. But the preparation was a ritual. Grandma made everything from scratch, and she invited me to help. "Cooking is love," she said as she carefully peeled an orange for me. Before eating, they both sat quietly for a minute. "What are you doing?" I asked. "We're being thankful for the food," Grandma replied. It felt odd at first, but when I tried it, I realized how often I took such small things for granted. 8 a.m., chores with a purpose. Next came chores. I usually dread cleaning, but my grandparents approached it differently. Grandpa worked in the garden, pruning plants and watering them, while Grandma swept the house and dusted the furniture. I joined in initially out of obligation, but as we worked, we talked and laughed. "Every task is important," Grandpa said. "If you take pride in the small things, you'll find joy everywhere." By the end, I felt an odd sense of accomplishment that I rarely got from my digital work. 10 a.m., quiet time. After the chores, it was time for a break. But instead of mindlessly scrolling on their phones, they don't even have smartphones, my grandparents read books or sat quietly. Grandma worked on a knitting project, and Grandpa read the newspaper. I tried sitting quietly. It was surprisingly hard to resist the urge to check my phone, but once I settled in, I found my mind clearing up. It felt refreshing to just be for a while. 12 p.m., lunch and family bonding. Lunch was another homemade meal: vegetable stew and rice. Grandma explained each ingredient to me, sharing stories about how she learned to cook from her own mother. The meal wasn't just about eating, it was about connection. Afterward, we sat together and shared stories. I learned about their childhoods, their struggles, and their joys. It made me realize how little I knew about them and how rich their lives were. 2 p.m. afternoon nap. The post-lunch nap was something I initially resisted. "I don't have time for naps," I said, but Grandpa insisted, saying it was his secret to staying energetic throughout the day. I gave it a try, and to my surprise, I woke up feeling refreshed. It was a small reminder to listen to my body and give it the rest it needed. 4 p.m. creative hobbies. In the afternoon, my grandparents dedicated time to their hobbies. Grandma continued knitting, while Grandpa worked on a wooden birdhouse he was building. They encouraged me to join in. I decided to sketch, a hobby I had abandoned years ago. As I drew, I felt a wave of calmness and focus that I hadn't experienced in a long time. "Hobbies keep your mind young," Grandpa said, and I believed him. 6 p.m. evening walk and reflection. As the sun began to set, we went for another walk. This time, Grandpa shared life lessons. "Life isn't about rushing," he said. "It's about savoring each moment." We stopped by a small park and watched kids play. It reminded me of simpler times and how much joy could be found in everyday moments. 7:30 p.m., dinner and unwinding. Dinner was light, soup and bread. Afterward, we sat together, talking and laughing. There was no TV, no distractions, just genuine connection. Before bed, Grandma handed me a journal. "Write about your day," she said. I scribbled down my thoughts, realizing how different this day had been. It was slower, yes, but also fuller and more meaningful. 9 p.m., early to bed. At 9 p.m., my grandparents were ready to sleep. At first, it felt too early, but by then I was genuinely tired. As I lay in bed, I reflected on the day. It was simple but profound. I learned that life doesn't have to be a constant race. Slowing down, being present, and finding joy in small things can make all the difference. Conclusion: living my grandparents' routine for just one day changed how I see life. Their way of living, rooted in gratitude, simplicity, and purpose, showed me how to find peace in a world that often feels overwhelming. The next morning, as I packed my bag to leave, Grandma smiled and said, "Come back soon, and don't forget what you learned." "I won't, Grandma. I promise." The end. Thanks for watching English Language Academy. Subscribe now.